What's the most creative way of driving someone crazy discreetly? Story 1. I worked in an office where there was a legendary feud between two managers, Alex and Bill. Alex was an older guy. He was patronizing, arrogant, and had some kind of tenure. Bill was the guy who had to fix Alex's mess-ups. Here's what Bill did. Got sand from the outside and sprinkled just a few grains on Alex's chair mat. This made the chair casters grind a little and his shoe slip, which was irritating. Spray a dab of really cheap and pungent cologne under Alex's desk. Alex hated perfume and would complain about it constantly. Replaced the handset cord on his office phone with one that was horrendously tangled and overstretched. Gently unplugged the PS2 plug to the keyboard or mouse. It looked plugged in, but it wasn't. Tech support learned to hate Alex's constant calls. The file cabinets we had used a spring to close them automatically about an inch from closing. Bill broke these springs so the file cabinet would never close properly. Later, he angled the cabinet forward by shimming up the back slightly so the lower drawer would roll open at the slightest vibration, hitting Alex's chair. Put bitters in Alex's coffee mug. That junk is hard to get the taste out of ceramic, apparently. Took Alex's legal pads and left them in some humid condition long enough to warp the pages. Unlocked the locking mechanism on his office chair back so Alex thought he was falling for a second. Swapped the M and N in Alex's keyboard. Swapped the number pad keys in reverse like a touch-tone phone. Put Vaseline on the tips of the ballpoint pens. Sometimes Bill would just steal stuff off of Alex's desk or swap them with something broken. Alex has a locked office, but Bill had a key to it apparently. Bill was eventually caught and then fired because Alex set up a webcam that snapped pictures and mailed them when it sensed movement. Sounds like Bill just needs to ask Alex out on a freaking date already. And our first story is giving me just straight up The Office vibes. If Bill hadn't blatantly snuck into Alex's office, he probably could have kept on going. Did Bill have no defense in pointing out all the stuff Alex did? If I constantly had to fix some of my superiors' mistakes without any recognition, I'd probably do some of these things too. Story 2. I was sitting in class and this really irritating prissy girl was sitting in front of me with her iPhone. She had the whistle ringtone on full blast and was getting blown up, most likely by sea-substance dealers. So her phone whistled frequently. The only logical thing to do in my mind was to whistle exactly like her phone every single time she looked away from it. I thought she would figure out it was me after the first or second time, but nope. I mimicked her phone going off for 45 minutes before she finally turned it on silent and put it in her purse. She also never found out it was me. Too long didn't read? I mimicked a girl's iPhone text tone until she put it away. Picture me reading your post on my phone in a dead quiet room, my two pit bulls snoozing peacefully by my side. I was impressed with your mimicry, and after hearing the sound in my head, decided to see how accurately I could reproduce it. I didn't nail it, but what I did do was hit some sort of resonance in my mouth that destroyed the silence and amplified my whistle into some demonic call that not only startled me, but sent my dogs into a terrified frenzy. One of them, still half asleep no doubt, ran directly into the wall in front of her and fell to her back. The other nearly did a backflip, stood up, looked me straight in the face, and barked twice. That was the most hilarious thing I've seen in ages, and I thank you for it. First off, I too am impressed with how well this guy could imitate the whistle. I'm sure if I could do it off the top of my head, I could probably approximate it, but I'm not so sure I could be able to mimic it exactly. Either that or this girl is tone deaf. Secondly, I can see the reaction of those dogs in my head. Poor guys. I hope they got some pets or some treats as a consolation. Story 3. Not someone did to me on purpose, but one that happened nonetheless. At my old rental I had with my sister, for about a couple of months, I kept hearing ringing noises. Similar to an old phone ringing every time I would walk through the hallway, kitchen, lounge room, or dining room. Or also when I listened to music on the stereo in the lounge room. For months it drove me crazy. I would be walking and hearing, stop to listen, and lo and behold, nothing. I never caught on to how it stopped every time I looked for it. I thought it was a ghost, humoring myself, or that neighbor's freaking phone kept ringing. So one day I was looking for something in the kitchen, and I looked on top of the tallest cupboard and found this mother-friending clock. This piece of junk had one of those old-school bells and rings on it. Vibrations from walking/stereo made it ring. For freaking months, that bastich drove me insane. No one believed me about the ringing. Turns out my mother bought my sister the clock and sat it on top of the cupboard where it got pushed back where you couldn't see it. So, yeah. Basically, hide an item that will make annoying noise where you can't find it. I've always heard variations of this where you would take an object that would make a noise every so often, just long enough in between noise where you would kind of lose track of where it came from. This one is a little more insidious because it's organic. It's not electronic in any way, and it's triggered by the very person that's making the noise. If you wanted to do something like this on purpose, this would be diabolical. Story 4. 3 years ago, I made my wife a lasagna. Sauce from scratch, homemade spinach pasta, expensive cheese, the works. Hours invested. And the return? You should put more cheese on it like at the macaroni grill. I went out that night and bought 6 interior left-hand doors. All of our interior doors were right-handed. I cut plugs to fill the strike plate and hinge mortises, and every few weeks I change out a door or two. Right hands for left, left for right. It only takes about 20 minutes now. Pull the door, plug the mortises, spackle the plug seam, chisel the plug from the opposite side, hang the opposite door, and sweep up. I painted the first few times, but it's a white paint jam, and I decided the paint smell was more suspicious than the unpainted spackle. It's a thin seam, and my wife wouldn't even know where to look. She's never said anything about it, but I've seen her grasp the air where a doorknob used to be 100 times. Forget the macaroni grill. Story 5. Dump them by saying, "I'm done," and "It's too late to talk about it." Then proceed to message them daily asking if they need anything, essentially making it impossible for them to move on. My ex is doing this to me while she's clearly already over me, and it's working. To counter this, drop little hints that you're into someone else now. X. Do you need blah blah? You. Nah. Use the name of girl you both know. Got me blah blah. Thanks though. X. Girl we both know, last name? You. Nah. X. Girl we both know who then? Then just don't answer any more questions about this mystery girl. She'll think you're sparing her feelings by avoiding the subject. It will drive her nuts who is suddenly stealing your attention. Story 6. This isn't creative, but fun. When you're talking to someone, keep looking at one specific spot on their face, like the side of their nose or something. Don't stare at it all the time, but enough. If they ask if there's something on their face, act like you don't know what they're talking about. It doesn't take that long when they can't remember what they were talking about. I worked with a girl who said at a previous job she heard a manager she hated had a foot fetish. So when he would come into her cubicle, she'd slip her shoes on and off, absently and innocently. Sometimes she'd show up at his cubicle in stocking feet. She said it completely sidetracked him and neutralized any train of thought he had. "Sarah, these reports are unacceptable. I asked for an Excel file where everything is on one sheet and you're, yeah, fix that up. Today." Oh, that's devious. Not many fetishes you could get away with in public like that. This guy ended up being really vulnerable. And this girl can get away with that kind of behavior while looking completely innocent. That is genius. Story 7. A coworker of mine used the annoyatron on another coworker for weeks. It's a small device, $half size, that makes a quiet, high-pitched beep at random intervals. It has a magnet on it so you can stick it under a chair or hide it in some pretty hard-to-find locations. Sometimes he'd turn it off for a few days or a week, only to turn it back on when the victim had let his guard down. He would move it all around the office. The guy started getting desperate after a few weeks of this. He had maintenance come in and take the thermostat apart. He looked in the ceiling tiles and air vents. The icing on the cake was when the prankster put the annoyatron in the poor guy's car. He used to leave it unlocked during the workday. He thought the feds were after him. Story 8. The penny trick works great. Start by leaving a penny on your friend's desk, chair, coat pocket, places where you would expect to find a penny. Leave one a day for a while, varying the locations. Then start leaving them in shoes, socks, bed, pillowcase. At first, they'll ignore the penny, but eventually it will bug them. Took my roommate 3 weeks until he stroked out one night after finding a penny embedded in his bar of soap. I highly recommend this. Drives them freaking mad. Edit. I wanted to add go nuts with this. His final straw was the soap, but I really wanted to start putting them in his car and get a coworker of his to play along and start leaving them around his desk. I'm upset my plans fell short. Story 9. This one's buried, and I posted it before, but it's worthy of this thread. I'll give a shortened version. Dude at work was complaining that his spoons were slowly disappearing from the lunchroom. He had brought 6 to work, and he was down to 2. Everyone else in his lab hatched this plan. Every time someone sent him an email, at the bottom, in white text, i.e. invisible until highlighted, everyone would write spoon, 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 spoon. We all did this for several weeks. He had a Gmail account. And that's when he started losing his mind. Every website he visited had ads for spoons and flatware. He thought Google was reading his mind. Wow! Everyone complains about Gmail and Google collecting your personal information. Way to make it work for you. That is a sinister way to get back at this guy. I guess from now on, just don't bring spoons to work. Story 10. My neighbor is a huge freaking jerk. Always being loud, yelling at his wife, the dog, the kids, etc. Always playing his cruddy garage rock, blasting it out of the garage so the whole street can hear. My payback for this is that every night I go over to their front yard and move this stuff around. His cruddy little garden gnomes, his cruddy hose, his cruddy lawnmower, his cruddy shovel. Just move it all around a little bit every single night. Every now and again I hear, "Who keeps moving my freaking shovel around?" Ha ha ha, sucker. And now he beats his wife. Congrats. In that case, it's a good thing he can't find his shovel. Story 11. Stealing this from the office. If you know someone that has a house phone and uses it daily, or someone in the office with one, every day get in early and take it apart and add 1 penny. Repeat this for months on end until it's a lot heavier than it used to be. Then one day, take all of the pennies out and laugh as they smack themselves in the face with the phone. Alternatively, fill it with uranium. Not only will it get heavier, but they will also get cancer. That'll get me. Story 12. Step 1. Become an excellent pickpocket. Step 2. Specialize in placing things into people's pockets. Step 3. Place strange things into their pockets while no one is watching. The best thing to place are fried eggs. Not runny, but still a gooey consistency. And a small balloon filled partially with lukewarm water, called the phantom scrotum. Wouldn't that make you a put pocket? Kudos for that person for coining put pocket. I like that one. And that one's genius because you're not stealing from anybody. It's probably still a crime somewhere, but I doubt it's as heavy as stealing. But very, very creative. Story 13. When you're talking to one of your friends or somebody you know, always stand just a little too close or a little too far away. If you're standing too close and they back up, you back up too. And if you're standing a little too far away and they move closer, you move closer. Repeat. Watch them go slowly mad and probably try to avoid talking to you again. Surefire way to maintain meaningful friendships. Story 14. My sister was really passive-aggressive towards a roommate. She used to eat all the berries out of Kellogg's Red Berry cereal, but leave a small enough amount so she thought Kellogg's was just being a jerkwad. Your sister sounds like a serial killer. Ha 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 ha. Story 15. While walking outside in a crowded area, start looking up in the sky. Shade with your hand. Point upwards and whisper something to whoever you walk with. Then take note of how many other people will spend some time trying to figure out what you just saw in the sky. I think there was a music video or two that had this same premise. You gotta be subtle with this one. The whole thing gets blown when somebody actually asks you and confronts you as to what you saw. I'm trying to think what the best response to that would be. Maybe say you don't have time to explain and rush off. Story 16. I spent a whole day crinkling a disposable water bottle every time I took a sip. Not crushing it, just a little crinkle. It caused a minor freakout at about 2 in the afternoon. You're the worst kind of person, especially if it's in a classroom. Story 17. Every time their sports team loses, tie a red balloon to their car. Over time, the stimulus of the red balloon will become attached to the sadness of their team losing in their psyche. Then, simply show them a red balloon to reduce them to tears. Oh, that's mean. That is so psychologically mean. And it's a very interesting way to target guys' feelings, by going after one of their interests, sports. Quite literally Pavlovian. Story 18. Whilst my friends and coworker took a break one day, I plugged a wireless mouse into the back of his computer. For the past 2 weeks, I occasionally jogged the mouse, and he's slowly driven insane by it. Story 19. My favorite was the person that sewed someone else's sleeve button a little closer every few weeks so the guy felt his arms were swelling. Story 20. Try to open a bag of chips quietly for an hour, and then proceed to try and quietly eat the chips. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.